Hey everyone, Sycra here, and welcome to another episode of Pointy Chins, where I take you through my art journey. Alright, so starting out, this is the month that I kind of hyped a bit last episode, so I'm hoping it's okay. But anyway, starting out, more characters. I think the proportions are, solidifying as before, and things are starting to feel okay here. I did some composition things, nothing really that I'm happy with. Yeah, so I really didn't like this one, and I did a fix so you can see kind of what I would change. I feel like her face was not, like her features weren't really on her face, they're kind of sliding off because there's not a sense of the three-dimensional form in this, so that was just like a redo. I just want to make it more clear when I say I don't like something, I feel when I do these sketches it helps to illustrate exactly what I don't like about it. But these are better. I like some of the pushing in this one, and overall the feeling is kind of and these ones, this one, and this one are from reference, it looks like, and the rest are from imagination, so clearly, I mean, the quality's a bit different. But I think the thing is, I am becoming more comfortable, and I'm also getting more of what I originally set out to get, so it's becoming kind of confusing for me, because to this point, it's been a lot of, alright, get to some stage, some level that you're comfortable with, and then we'll see what happens, and then you do something with that. But I was so far from being at a place I was comfortable with that it felt like, well, okay, I'll worry about the after part later when that comes. For now, I've got to work on getting the proportions right, or getting better at anatomy or something. There was always something important technically to deal with, rather than concerning myself too much with a result or what happens when you get technical skill. So, this one I'm not super happy with because it just doesn't feel flowy enough or streamlined, whereas these ones are. So even within the same page, the warm-up picture isn't so great, and then these get better. I kind of like the proportions of these ones. I like this one quite a lot. I like the proportions, I like the attitude, I like how simple the head is. It's basically a diamond shape. And then these shapes are all working quite well. These two look nice. This one's pretty cool. So, I mean, there's a lot of... This is not so much of a problem anymore. This one is a big problem. This one's better. These ones are fun. I like these types of faces, but again, this one's a problem. I probably didn't know how to solve this type of thing at the time. Well, clearly I didn't, but now I think I still struggle with stuff like this, these types of chibi characters, but what I would have told myself as a, like if I was to do it now, I'd probably do it more like this. So the idea is, when you want to do a chibi character, you have to understand everything is getting squished, and cute things tend to not have too much negative space. If you can see in this arm, for instance, how much negative space there is, that's kind of taking away from cuteness. So by making the arms fatter, chubbier, everything is more, baby or teddy bear-like. You get these types of styles working more. And even with the hair, having it all kind of... here, I just didn't know what I was doing. I probably wanted to do, like, crazy anime hair, but I wasn't, able to pull it off at all. It looks very flat. It's, in a way, better to just simplify them into bigger shapes. Like, bigger, fatter shapes are really what I was missing. See, because you've got, like, a big, fat thigh shape, a big head. Even the hair is kind of a shape, but it's too much stuff is going on, whereas this is a lot more simple and streamlined and just bigger, fatter shapes overall. And yes, you still maintain things, like this big triangle, but you soften everything. And that was kind of tricky for me to. It took a while to get that because I was fighting against my desire to make things pointy and sort of like, well, I like thin arms, so I keep thin arms, right? And it's like, no, you don't. Even the body size, because this is kind of weird now, but like the body type, the age, it probably reduced the age, but this one had breasts, so it's like, all right, give this one breasts then, see if you can still pull it off. I don't think it completely works, but you know, it's more this way. And then with the style, you got to push the eyes way down and really push this cheek area, like lower it. I could lower it even further to get that more baby-like proportion. But yeah, I really like this one. And these are nicer. See, this one is less like a chibi character, and so I can do skinnier arms, but the silhouette of this is still a bit fatter, and even here the arms aren't super skinny. This one's not quite working as well. Again, it's a issue with the form, like going around the form, and I also don't really like the eyes looking like that or that big. But again, it's an experiment, so that's fine. This one I like quite a bit. I like how there's some gesture in the scarf moving. This guy's got crazy mustache. That's good. These are, you know, simpler shapes. If you look at the shape, really what it is a triangle with a rectangle. That's basically it. So, and here as well, I was doing that thing. See, you can kind of see where I initially did the chin, right? And then I probably realized right away that's not going to work. It's going to look too old. So then I did a second line, which also wasn't right, and then I finally pushed that in to get more of that baby faced thing with the diminished chin, I guess you can call it. So things like that. I really feel like those types of discoveries are best done just through mileage, just through trial and error, because once you understand it, you remember it a lot better and you can manipulate it more. You get to learn, oh, this makes a person look this old, but if I diminish it even further, because I know what to do, I know, well, here, okay, I'm going to diminish it for the sake of making this closer to a baby proportion, rather than just, oh, I saw this artist draws the chin like this, so I have to copy that. That's a lot more of it's more unstable ground to build a foundation. So yeah. So with these ones, I was trying to answer more of, okay, now what? Like, yeah, okay, fine. You've got your style. Now what do you do with it? And I wanted to think, well, okay, so I draw a lot of naked people, but that's not really what I would have the finished works doing. I mean, that's fine for learning proportions. So what about clothing? What kind of clothing do I want these people to wear? And I realized, like, I kind of like sort of sci-fi or futuristic-y, but I don't know. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, so it's like, okay, so there's some exploration to be had there. I don't really like this outfit, but it's got some elements of things I like. Like, it does feel slightly futuristic, but I also don't like things to be too real world. So that's, you know, it's a direction, but not a great direction. One thing I do like, though, is I do seem to have gotten a bit more structure with the head, which is great. So this is kind of reminds me of Psylocke's uniform from X-Men. But I like those types of things too, I guess, because I read a lot of comics when I was young. So these types of things with a lot of cuts in them. I like fishnet textures. I like these shapes, like cut shapes. So here too, I was like cutting into the shapes. So that's a thing where it's like vaguely I kind of know I like this, but I'm not sure. I also like designy things. I don't like brands or text on my image so much, but just shapes are okay. These types of shapes, like organic things, collars, I like these symbol things on heads. I like kind of markings, and I don't know. Again, it's just like trying to figure it out. And then I thought, okay, do I like more fantasy stuff? What would I do with a fantasy thing? And this is just nonsense, but it's, again, experimentation. I think you've got to get through these stages, but this was really racking my brain, like doing this, trying to think of what it is I like, because I know I like faces, and I know I like expressions, and so when it's down to a face and an expression, like this face doesn't really have any form, but I still like the expression, and this one too, like getting the characters to feel like they're alive is really, really important to me, but then outside of that, it's not, I'm not really sure. So as I'm doing this over the next days, it's kind of a really, really difficult period for me. Much more than it might seem. Like these pictures that look funny are quite just frustration. You can see here, like these lines are very frustrated, scribbles, trying to make sense of, okay, here's clothing, what looks good and what kind of designs do you like, and there's a franchise called, I think it's called Hyperdimension Neptunia. I saw figurines for it first, and I really liked them, and I liked the clothing, and it's like, yeah, that's close to what I like. I unfortunately did not like the anime of it at all. I tried to get through the first episode, and I don't think I could even do that. But the designs were cool, so it's like, okay, is that what I like? But with all of them, I realize it's like, it's never 100%. It's like, yeah, kind of, but not quite. But then whenever I do my version, it's not there either. So it feels like either I can do exactly their version and get it right, or make something that at least looks good, or do my version and it just looks bad. So here, more frustration things, a cup bird, I don't know. Again, yeah, frustration. He's a pretty good show of that. Just some stupid stuff. Not really knowing what to do. Going back to this sort of more cartoony proportion, you can see here that the lines are getting a lot more smoothed and curvy. The sharp is still there, the sharpness. The chins are getting a bit less pointy, just because I'm realizing I was sticking very much to pointy chins as an idea, but where it came about was I was thinking, what do I like? And I wasn't sure at all when I started pointy chins, and I thought, well, what features do I like? I kind of like sharp eyes and pointy chins and pointy noses, and then I had shown some images to some of my friends, and Cynics was there, and he's like, pointy chins is not a style. And I was like, okay, that kind of bothered me at the time, because I was trying so hard to figure out what do I like, and then I didn't think of it like, oh, just making the chins pointy is a style. I thought of it more like, I have to figure out what is in my style, and then I can build upon it. So it's like, oh, well, I have pointy chins, I have whatever, and then I would add, like, oh, I like bigger forearms and more narrow upper arms and stuff, or just stuff like that. And then I kind of ran with it, but because I ran with it, I almost felt obligated, because it kind of was a joke at first, but I felt obligated to continue that. So it was quite hard to break free of that, because I was sort of telling myself, well, I know I like this, and sure, it's true that, I like those features, but it's not necessary to put those on every single character. And by doing so, you kind of limit yourself as well. So here I'm kind of allowing myself to be a lot more varied in the shapes I use. It's not just sharp things. It's some things are sharp, but some things aren't sharp. And the things that aren't sharp make the things that are sharp look more sharp. So here This, again, you can see, like, this page was okay, and this page is quite a disaster. I didn't even feel like it was worth putting the outlines with the water brush. So, yeah, still struggling. And then with this one, it's kind of working on, like, younger faces, different body shapes. This is kind of working. Again, I have this push and pull between, on one hand, wanting to make things very thin and long, and on the other hand, making them look more cute, I guess, which makes them a bit more chubby. And so these two contrasting ideas, the tall and the long, or the short and the squat, both of which I like, are kind of competing at this time, and I don't really know how to resolve them, but I do know, like, I like this stuff, and I also like some of this stuff, and like this guy and this super long tall guy, and I don't like this arm because that hand looks busted. I like this guy a lot. Like, these shapes are very appealing to me. So I just fixed this guy, just how I would do it now. Let that flow. There's a direction, and if you follow this and you go all the way back here, you're kind of killing it, plus the anatomy issues, so that should be fine. And then moving on. So here, again, exploring body types, different body types. This one, it's like, well, I like this, I like this, I like this, and I guess this is not necessarily a good trait, but usually if I find myself in a position, this one I don't like, by the way, if I find myself in a position where I'm saying I like a thing too much, it makes me quite uncomfortable, and I feel like I'm not learning anymore. I feel like, well, if I'm liking this, that means I'm okay with it, meaning I need to explore unexplored territories. I need to get out of my comfort zone and do things that aren't easy for me. Here, doing some studies of armpits and how the arm connects. I mean, this is kind of a tricky area for a lot of people. A lot of artists struggle with, like, the shoulder girdle, and I am no exception to that. Here, again, trying to do a character. I didn't get the gesture right. This is kind of broken. I can fix it, but I mean, I could fix it now, but at the time I wasn't exactly sure what was going on. I kind of feel like they have chewing gum torsos, like the old sticks of chewing gum, where they're very flat and bendy and stuff. This face is okay. This one's and then so I fixed this one. Just a quick fix, like simpler gesture. Resolve this into a more basic shape here and a more basic shape here. You don't need so many angles here, just one, boom, she's resting her weight back here. And with this one, actually, what I learned is I do like, I did in a few episodes back, I was doing some empresses, and I like facial design. So I was thinking, okay, instead of doing one image where I kind of put a face paint thing on a person, let's just explore this. And so I did a bunch of different things and asked myself, like, what do I like? What don't I like? And I found I was liking, like, these ones with, forehead markings, cheek markings. I didn't really like this one or this one where it's, overall the whole face is covered. And so I was trying to understand, what is it about markings on a face and what looks good? What types of patterns? And some of these work. I mean, this could be a character in and of themselves, but some of them don't. Like, this is not so great. This one clearly, to me, it doesn't feel very aesthetically pleasing, as is this one. It's like, yeah. So the idea was there, and the desire to want to finish it, like explore it to an end, was there as a possible end to this confusion I was having. And here I tried a different, I don't know if they're water brushes, but they're kind of like that, but they're filled with ink. And I found them way too saturated. But here I'm still playing around with this idea of markings, like cheek markings, forehead markings, different colored lips, which I really like. I really like unusually colored lips, eyes, hair, stuff like that. So yeah, playing around, trying to see what works, trying to see what doesn't, and clearly I felt this was too saturated, so I didn't continue with that. And then moving on to faces, because that's kind of, again, my comfort zone. So when I return to faces, a lot of times I don't know what to draw, and I don't really have the mental energy to do anything extremely difficult, like studying anatomy or working on areas outside of my comfort zone. And I have to do a drawing, so let's just do faces. So that's these. Again, kind of going a bit more realistic, and then a bit here even more, and then a bit less realistic at times. But fighting it less in that I'm not trying to make my style into something. And I think this is something artists have been saying a lot, which I wasn't kind of really understanding at the time, because I felt like style is made. For instance, this one I like a lot, but I wouldn't naturally do it. And so I feel you need to have both an instinct about, or just doing what you like to do anyway, or what comes naturally, but also a bit of direction in like a bit of a forced do this because you like it rather than just because it comes to you naturally. Because some of the things aren't that natural, but they may be things you want in your style. And for a person like me who has identity issues, it can be difficult, I suppose. All right, so here I was thinking, I don't really know how to draw clothing again. I don't want to just forever be doing nude figures, so let's add clothing on them, but what kinds of clothing do I like? And I think this one might have been from reference, and then possibly this one too, and then this one seems like it's very much not. I have a strong desire to do things that no one else has done. I don't know whether that's necessarily a good thing, but it's just a thing. So when I look at these, it's like, yeah, it's okay, but it feels like it's already been done, and I feel like I want to put my spin on things. But I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's been done or not. It's just a matter of what do you like. If you like it, do it. If you don't. And of these, I think I only like this guy and this one. No, I guess I like this one too. This one's okay. Yeah, I just like that they have life in them. That's really the most important thing. If I draw a person and they don't feel alive, it's just not right to me. And I mean, it's okay to get people that don't feel alive if you're studying for something, but at the end of the day, I do want all my characters to feel like they not only have a personality, but they have thoughts and a history, and so of these, still, staying with faces, but exploring different things, different styles, allowing, like, this one is quite different than, I suppose, this one, or this one, or this one, but they're getting closer. Again, sticking with this sort of chibi look, triangle head, oval head, square head, or rectangle head. But it works, but it's still, it's kind of conflicting with these two, right? Like, do they fit in the same world? Kind of. They're getting closer, much closer. But yeah. So here, this is kind of working. It's still got a bit of that chewing gum body, but the arms got a bit fatter, so it's working a bit better than this one. I think is also getting better because it's long and stretched, but it's because everything is still extremely exaggerated and it's not getting too realistic. Like, usually my problem was I would start with a head like this, and then I would do a body that was very much closer to what an actual realistic human proportion would be, and then it would look wrong and it would look stupid. But actually just simplifying and making the body as crazy in a way as the face is really helps. So here, I mean, the shoulders are super wide, the torso is really narrow, but it kind of works. So, I mean, it's crazy how long it took me to figure out just those simple things. Here I'm trying to make rounder shapes, but I think I could have gone even rounder with this arm and really, really exaggerated the noodleness, like a macaroni arm would have worked well. Again, playing around with different symbols and markings on the heads and stuff, and this lady in perspective, kind of good. I think it's okay. All right, and still, you know, doing things. When I put clothing on people and I'm not trying, I usually have the very skin tight things that don't really show form, because it's like I'm comfortable with the nude figure. I'm not really comfortable with clothing. Here I'm trying a bit. And here she's got her own symbol thingy. But yeah, it is a weakness, because I don't really want to do clothes per se. So, but I did like this symbol, so I guess I reused it here on this one's head. And this one has a different symbol. And here, going back to clothing again, because I was probably thinking, you know, I should try again to do clothes that I like, or outfits. I don't know if these are clothes, because I guess it still qualifies, but this actually works better. You know, a simple design. I like how most of this is working, so I would say this is actually more in the direction I would be heading. And then I'm continuing with these kind of embellished jewelry or something on the forehead. And because I like to do larger foreheads, I think because I have not much of a forehead, I guess this is a funny story. I used to get told I was smart a lot, and it's like, fine, but I have like a small forehead, and whenever I would look at people who are, you know, in pictures and they're smart or whatever, they always had huge foreheads. I felt like it's kind of like smart people have big foreheads. I don't know. I didn't feel quite comfortable with my more like this person's forehead. So maybe that contributed to it. Why I have a lot of forehead real estate on my characters, but it feels a bit empty. So having the symbols really adds to it. And yeah, see here, I've kind of realized that I really like when there's things on the forehead and then things on the cheek. It creates this triangle shape, which I like. So that's a realization of just doing it, allowing myself, hey, you want to do stuff on the cheeks and the forehead, just do it. And I mean, Kay has her things, her little triangles on her cheeks. I really like this one. I mean, it could be a bit flowier with the gesture, but it's got something, again, more forehead decoration. I was kind of thinking, like, I don't know what I'm doing, but maybe it's a thing that my characters have things on their foreheads. I guess it's kind of like Hindus with the bindi and the different shapes, because I mean, we know the circle in outside of India, often the circle is understood, the bindi, as placement of, I guess, the third eye or something. But there's actually a lot of different shapes. You can have like 3 lines, you can have suns, you can have a lot of different shaped forehead thingies. So yeah, more experimentation with that. This guy's cool. Looks like it was done really quick, and then I just put an outline around it. But I like stuff like this. I'm not sure anyone else does, but I do. I like this guy. He's cool. These shapes are working well. Again, coming to a stage where it's like I can say I like this one. I like this one. This is working well. This one too. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I gave him a forehead thing, and also these lines coming up. I don't know if this is good or not, but I have this need to want to have a style or something, just, I guess, be someone who is easily recognizable, that you would look at it and say, well, that's no one else, that's just that person. So you look at the picture, it's like, well, that's Sycra. I kind of want that, and maybe I push too hard to get that, but because I feel that's not quite healthy. It would be better if I was just comfortable with myself, and I don't need to be unique. If it happens to be unique, that's fine. But even if it's extremely generic and cliche, as long as I enjoy it, that should be a good enough reason to do things. But I figure that if it is a problem that I have, it is one that could have a good end, because I'll try so hard to be unique that I just may find things no one else does, and I just may end up being that way. Which, I guess, again, I don't know if that's healthy or not. I like this one. Don't really... Yeah, these ones are okay. Like, they're okay. They're okay. Yeah, so more clothing things. What kind of clothes, what kind of designs. They're very abstract, and they're not built in reality, and this is probably the problem, where the designs I was looking at from different artists or shows or franchises or whatever, they start from reality and then they abstract from there. Whereas what I'm doing is I'm starting from their abstraction and trying to make it my own, which is probably not good. And I think I've corrected this to some extent now, but at the time, it was more like, well, I don't want to draw. I really just was bored of normal clothing design, and I wanted to do weird stuff if I had to do it. Honestly, I probably wouldn't have done anything. If I could just get away with doing faces, that's all I would do, probably. But if I have to include other things, it's like, well, I want it to be interesting. So here I'm working with trims and areas of one texture and contrasted with another texture. Here I'm thinking about shapes, like bigger shapes. I wouldn't say this is successful, but like, have a big shape here and a big shape here. And Spawn does this. So I was probably thinking about Spawn when I was doing these types of shapes. I like these types of super short cut jackets, and then how they contrast with the rest of the body. If there's nothing really else on, like how it creates an interesting silhouette. I was thinking about proportions here, and also thinking about, well, okay, so let's say you start with this, how would you embellish this and get the things? And it's like, well, okay, maybe you have like an area where this comes out and then this goes like that. Here I was thinking about just a mechanical type mech creature, but keeping in mind some of these types of proportional issues. And maybe this guy has some weird glasses, and again, thinking like, so I still have the facial marking thing, so I like facial markings, I like weird clothes, I like these short jacket things with high collars, and wrist things, and still like, what do I do with this? I don't know. But continuing, and I'm still like at a point where I'm extremely stressed out every time I'm drawing, just because I feel like, what do I do? And a lot of what I think, and this is probably not good as well, but I do a lot of things that aren't good, or think in a lot of ways that aren't good. But I think about you, like the viewer watching this, and thinking, oh, this is boring. He's just doing the same thing over and over again. And I feel bad. And it's like, no, I don't want to lose viewers, or lose a viewer's interest, or make them think like, this is just the same old stuff all the time. And so that's kind of on my mind. This is more like how I feel like, oh yeah, you're trying to do these faces, right? Like, inside I'm all, no, I don't, this isn't fun. Here I'm playing around with more, different things. Like, I like asymmetrical designs as well. Trying to make her clothing kind of replicate this thing in the hair. See how it has that, and then here it has that again. I could have also done it the other way. That might be more interesting, where you have this angle and then a counter angle in the opposite direction. But treating the clothing like it is a design in and of itself. I like this one. So again, the collars, this type of cut, and again, some of these are okay. These are more like the classic superhero type outfits. This is reminiscent of Kay's outfit, the first one I did for Space Waitress Kay. She's still got a symbol in her head, and this guy too, he's got a symbol in his head. And I was thinking maybe their symbols mean something, but I'm not sure. Yeah, just more random shapes. But you'll see I'm struggling a lot less with the actual characters. Like, the characters are fine in terms of proportions and stuff. It's not a huge, the proportions are absolutely terrible now. That part's okay. But it's like, well, what do I do with these people that I'm making interesting shapes and stuff with? And that was still quite difficult. So here, again, go back to faces, proportions, figures, and just try and tell myself it's okay. It's okay to do stuff just because you feel like it. And here, I was really just letting my lines go a bit more crazy, like push it, go further. If you're in your comfort zone, go even further, and keep moving things, keep pushing the envelope of where you can go so you reach new things. And that led me to, go extremely sharp with things and just break stuff. And how does that feel? How does it feel to draw like this, but try and keep the shapes the same? So here, things are moving into a more abstract realm where they are readable, but not, perfect. Here, thinking about clothing again, clothing designs that I like. I went back to the forehead thing. Yeah, both things. I mean, I suppose it's at the stage where you can kind of see my own taste showing through, stuff like this. It's like, yeah, okay, this is a trend. It's not like I'm doing ball gowns and all sorts of random things. It's sort of, no, okay, you have these types of designs and this clothing, and this one kind of worked. Looking at it, it's like, yeah, that's okay. Not sure about the back here, but it's all right. I guess I was going for a sort of like a heart shape, but didn't quite get it. And then these are supposed to feel like the vertebra, and then trying to get the same shapes I mentioned before, how, having things on the arm up here and then the wrist. I like that type of look. Here, putting the symbol on the back of her, whatever, back, the C7 vertebra. And then here, I was thinking about, okay, so let's take a basic shape, like a box. Just make a box, and think of maybe like a treasure chest or something, and then put a design on it. So I tried to make a design that's sort of appealing. It's like, okay, so this is your first take. Now, make this more interesting. So, okay, I tried to add a bit to it, tried to make this trim within another trim, so that adds more detail. And then it's like, okay, add more to this one. So I took this one and then added more. It kind of looks like a bird in the end, but it does feel a lot more finished in this third one than in this first one. This first one's okay. The second one actually is perhaps the most I'm not sure about, but the third one does feel a lot more like what I'm missing, which is presentation. And I really, really, really struggle with presentation, like a lot, because for me, the sketch is everything. And once I get the sketch down, I feel the idea is down and I don't need anything else. And the parts that are unclear, I sort of enjoy. But this was, for me anyway, probably because I suck at this, it was a very hard mental exercise. And then I'm working with this guy, or this girl, and sort of, yeah, okay, so she has her forehead thing, and maybe it glows, and I put a thing around to make it feel like it was glowing. And yeah, it was really painful trying to work on this, because I don't think this is a good design. And I was just struggling, and then I felt like my head's imploding, and I drew this guy, and I drew his mask, and it was like all this just like feeling, and I just couldn't take it anymore with this. And so for this one, a different personality came out and just did his stuff because I was done. Although I did like this guy, it was like, yeah, kind of like that. And then I started just really allowing myself to just be okay with the difference. Like, if a different personality wants to draw, just let them draw instead of getting in their way. And so his drawing style is quite different than mine, and what he does is a little bit different. I guess it's a lot more abstract. He kept drawing, instead of circles. Oh yeah, he couldn't draw circles. That was a thing. I draw these circles, and he had trouble with that, so he started drawing these weird shapes. I hope it's not too annoying talking about other personalities or whatever, because I know some people kind of get annoyed hearing me refer to parts of myself as he instead of me, but it just feels that way. But yeah, after I did this, I looked back on this page and it was like, there's something about this character. I didn't really like this one, but I thought this one kind of works. And it just felt like this feels like a thing that is finished, but what would it be? What is this guy? So I decided to just run with him as a character and what is his story. And I came up with the name Wraith, and he's an incarnation of the slain son of the goddess of death. And he took many human sacrifices and a human host to create conditions for his revival. So what I thought of is a character who, and I suppose you can read this if you want, but I figured he's dead, and this thing in his face, this tearing, because remember I mentioned that I felt like my face is all torn because I'm just getting out of, I don't know, I couldn't concentrate on anything, and it was all being ruined, everything. Like I was coming to a crisis of what do I do with my pointy chins. So that's what it kind of felt like, is a tearing. And so I wanted his design to have this feeling of torn between things. And the idea, I just started making it up. So this idea that he has a jealous sister who thinks their mother always loved him more, that became another character. And when I say he, I'm talking about this guy. So I decided this guy, he is this goddess. And I thought the goddesses would all have these crests. So you see here brands. Each goddess has a forehead and cheek, because I realized, I also like the cheek things. Brand that distinguishes their followers from others. So that's kind of how I felt like, well, I want to do my goddesses. Like, I like this guy, he's cool. But I want to do my girls, and I want them to have their markings. How can I do that? And then this was a way of making it make sense. So finding out what my tastes were was really important, because it helped me understand, like, okay, if I'm going to do something with this, what do I do? I had this idea that he dies for a really stupid reason, that the mom... So the son gets killed by the mom by accident. And then the mom, feeling guilty, like, oh no, she killed her son and she's the goddess of death, so she's got, like, connections and stuff. She wants to reincarnate him and bring him back to life. But to do that, she needs a host body to house the spirit, because the body of this one's dead. So she finds this guy who's a monk, and he's just at this time, he's just a peaceful guy. His crest is for the goddess of life, whereas his crest is the same as hers, because it's the goddess of death, and he's the son, so he also gets the goddess of death stuff. And he... so they take his spirit and put it into him, and it's supposed to be a possession that takes over, and he gets turned into him. So he just becomes an incarnation of this guy Mesera, and this guy's name is Aaron. So Aaron is getting taken over, but he has a shaman guy who helps him, and who knows, or a sage who helps him, and because he's a monk, so he's very disciplined, and he uses his discipline and meditation and things to understand his mind is being taken over, he's being possessed, and he turns it and traps this guy in him. But in doing so, the possession is a fail, and so what happens is he kind of becomes half the son of the goddess of death and half not, which turns him into this guy Wraith, who is basically Aaron with the powers of Mesera. So yeah, so then it's like, all right, so let's draw Mesera now. And after this point, it just kind of snowballed, because it's, okay, I have this very basic and very stupid idea. And one thing that I often do is I look at ideas and I judge them. And this is not necessarily a nice thing I do, but I kind of think a lot of times, like, these ideas are stupid. They're easy. They're just cliche ideas. And I'm working on a much better idea that's really well thought through, and that's affinity, which I don't show people. But people who have seen parts of it do agree that it's pretty good, pretty great. So, but because of that, because I have this grand thing, I just think, like, well, okay, let's compare this to this. And I get kind of annoyed when I see stories that they just don't seem to have put extra thought into it. Like, I feel like you can have this super cliche idea, but just make it a bit more making sense. And then I thought, what if I just do an extremely cliche idea? So I was just running with this, like, this Wraith idea to me is very dumb. It's not a cool, really profound idea that's that's gonna really change anything. It's just it's a story. It's like a silly little, okay, yeah, you have this story and you have goddesses and whatever. And so I told myself, no, I'm just gonna run with that and make the most cliche thing I can, and then put a little bit of a spin on it, just to show, like, hey, you can do these cliche ideas and they can still make sense. Because often you see ideas like, oh, they'll use names of gods and things, but it just doesn't add up. It's like, well, this is a Greek god and this is an Egyptian god. Why are they together in the same pantheon? And why are you using these terms? And it just seems like it wasn't thought through enough. So anyway, here's Mesera. So he's like a joker. He likes to just, I don't know, dick around. There's a reason why he's the way he is, which I didn't know at the time, but now it's kind of figured out. So I'm not going to spoil everything. And this is Mrs. Wudo, who's kind of like I guess it's just a Yoda type character. Again, I'm just using cliche characters, archetypical characters. And he's the guy who mentors Aaron. He teaches him. And this is Wada, who's his counterpart. But she's a shaman for the goddess of death. So she is the one who raises Aaron and makes him Wraith. But Wraith is a failure. But she doesn't tell the goddess of death, whose name is Nahia. She doesn't tell Nahia that it's a failure, because she knows if she says, I screwed up, she'll probably get killed. So in trying to resurrect Mesera and failing with the possession because of him, because Wudo trains Aaron, and she and Wudo have I think they're brother and sister. I'm not exactly brother. Yeah, okay. Brother and sister. So he knows her magic, her dark magic, whatever. So he can recognize, okay, my student is being possessed, and she goes after his student just to, show him, like, oh, hey, I'll take your guy, your favorite pupil, and I'll turn him into, I'll let him be possessed. But it doesn't work out, and the result is Wraith. But she tells the goddess of death that it does work. So the goddess of death thinks Wraith is her son, but he's not. He's trapped inside Wraith. And yeah, so I did this sword because I suck with swords, and I just wanted to get an idea. And then I thought, okay, who is good with swords? And I thought, well, Joe Mad. Joe Mad, I think, does great swords. So I started looking at his stuff, but these aren't his designs. I just looked at this design and thought, if he was drawing this, how would he do it? And that was a really helpful exercise. So I did these designs. They're not spectacular, but they're a lot better than I could do before. And I did learn a lot, and I thought, wow, that's a really helpful way of doing things, is to draw it first the way you can with the ideas in your mind. So I had the idea, yeah, it's a curved blade because he's not exactly a straight character. He's kind of bent, so it's like, what would suit him? And so I created that, but then it's like, okay, now take that idea and look at someone who does that idea very well, and then take what you can from it. So here's more Nahia, the goddess of death, and I decided to write little bios of them, kind of describing their personality. And so hers is cunning and intelligent, but not wise, and short-tempered. And this actually changed in her development, so it's not quite accurate anymore. And that's important, that, you know, your stories and your characters do change. So I was working with her design, and I decided this one, I kind of liked how long it was. I liked that she's got this thing around her head, like a halo type thing, but it felt, yeah, too boxy, too masculine. So then I did this one, and I like this one a lot more. It's a lot more simple. It's basically a diamond. She's basically just a diamond, but felt good. And then this is Anariu, who's Mezura's sister and also her daughter. And her thing is that she doesn't like Mezura because he's being groomed for this grand purpose by his mom, and she feels like her mom, who's also his mom, their mother is too nice to Mezura, she just favors him, and so she's just got a chip on her shoulder, no sense of humor, she's entitled, bitter and jealous, and very much like a teenager. So yeah. And then this is Altrea, because I was thinking about what's the names, by the way, are extremely, like, super cliche, just not to the point of actual, like, I'm not going to call her Gaia, because that's been done. It's like, no, just make a name that hints of something, but still can be in its own world. And I thought, well, the goddess of life, what is she? And why doesn't she intervene? That's what I was really thinking. Why doesn't she stop the goddess of death from killing her own guy? Because Aaron worships the goddess of life, and the sage Wudo also worships the goddess of life. And I thought maybe she's, like, trapped. Maybe she's in a tree, and there's a tree guy in Game of Thrones, so that kind of felt like, yeah, do I do this? Maybe not. But I thought, let's just do it as a cliche thing. And I put a little deer because I thought, well, she's the goddess of life, so maybe animals are comfortable around her. And I'm not super happy with this, but I do change it in the future, and you'll get to see all that if you stay with me. But anyway, yeah, I figured she's usually asleep and, like, causing natural things to grow. She's on the earth, I guess, and with the goddesses, I figured they're in their own area. And then I thought, okay, so what other goddesses are there? If there's the goddess of life and the goddess of death, I figured, well, there's probably a goddess of fire, a goddess of water, a goddess of time, stuff like that. Pretty basic stuff. So the goddess of fire, she's, like, very spunky. Just I think of the concept of fire, right? Like, what is fire? And what comes to mind if I think of fire, and if I was to personify fire just as a thing, like, not as I don't think about the likeness or anything, just the traits of fire. What is it? And I think of needy, because with fire you need fuel, right? It needs oxygen, and it needs something to burn. I think of impulsive because, you get like forest fires and things, and the fire just kind of moves around. It's impatient because it doesn't have much time to exist. So I think of like, well, if it was a person, it would be impatient. This idea of always tries to be funny but never able to pull it off, that's more like I just draw the person and I think about their personality. So it's a combination of the two. On one hand, I'm thinking about what are the traits of whatever the element is, and it's obviously not what everyone's going to think. It's just my view. That's how I think of fire. That might not be how you think of fire, but it's important anyway. So with Liza, who's the kind of the opposite, and again, just put a Y there so it's not Lisa, whatever. With her, she's a lot more dumb in a way, because I think of water and I think of fire, and fire is very active and water's not really. So I think of her as acquiescent and passive and gullible and kind of airheaded. She's kind of dumb, but I also think of how water can be, like a water cutting machine, or a torrent, how it can also be very powerful, very destructive. So I figure she's usually nice and calm and whatever, but she gets really mad if she finds out she's been used, or if she finds out someone's making fun of her. And this happens a lot because she's kind of dumb, but she's also nice. So she sort of lives her life like, oh yeah, I think things are fine. But and some of these are based off real people or a combination of people who kind of share traits. And I remember a guy I knew who was kind of dumb, and people would kind of make fun of him, but if he didn't get the joke, he was fine. But if he started to suspect that he was the brunt of the joke, he would get aggressive and angry and violent. And so I thought, yeah, maybe that's how it is. Like she's very willing to forgive and give people the benefit of the doubt. But if she does suspect, like, hey, you're making fun of me, aren't you? Yeah, throw a tantrum and be all pissed off. And so I don't think these two, Vara and Lisa, get along, but I feel like they probably would spend time together just because she likes to make fun of things, and but she's not that witty. She's one of those people that, they try and be funny all the time, but they're not actually that funny. And but she kind of thinks she's funny. So yeah, I think of her as that. So with time, what's time? And I feel time is uninvolved. It just happens. You don't really get a say in it. And a lot of this, again, it's personal, because I feel like, I wanted to be an artist a long time ago and I wanted to succeed, but it just took time, and it took so much time and so many years, and I wouldn't have chosen that, but that's just the way it is. And so I think of time as uninvolved, and you have to be patient, and I think of her as very wise and quiet. But I also started to do this thing. I started with her, and actually her always tries to be funny, and she's kind of dumb, doesn't really get jokes, and with her, and I started to think of them as all like just a trait. Like, do they get jokes? Well, if I made a joke, who would laugh in the room? Would she laugh? And then I figured, like, time probably has a sixth sense of humor, just because that's kind of, I don't know, it's like so many awful things happen in history, and that was just my idea. And I thought, yeah, she's very detached and very, I decided Mesra had a crush on her just because, I don't know, I thought that would be an interesting dynamic. And also, I mean, these little things on their faces, the symbols, these were kind of hard to think of. So with the water, I mean, it's a water drop, but it also has to be something that is easy to draw, and because I figure if I was drawing them a lot, this would be a thing. And at this point, I'm not thinking like, I'm going to make this a comic or I'm going to make this anything. It's more just, these are ideas, and I would probably be too lazy to make it into a comic, I don't know, but I just wanted to deal with it as if it was going to be used for something, because then I get to practice character design, I get to practice a lot of things. So yeah, coming up with a design for that, and then for time, It's actually, it's kind of done poorly because I was using pen and I kind of screwed up. But it's supposed to be an hourglass type shape. And this is reminiscent of a clock with a hand, but it's reduced to a basic shape. And here's Wraith in side view, or at least an idea of what he looks like in side view. This white part is actually just his skin as well. So he has a dark part of his skin and the light part of his skin. And then here, I started doing more crests. So first I just did a bunch of boxes. They weren't filled with anything, just boxes. And then I started thinking about, okay, let's make shapes and then and also ideas. So I figured, well, there's probably a goddess of war and a goddess of peace and lightning and wind and all these, and some of them didn't become a thing. See, like this one, I couldn't figure out what that is. This kind of looked too much like a power symbol. I figured Vara dresses quite simply, but has crazy hair. All these ideas are subject to change, of course. Yeah, things like this, like victory. And so this feels like wings to me. And this is supposed to kind of feel like fireworks going off or something. I don't know. But that's kind of the idea. I also tried this one with a V for victory, but it didn't really feel as strong as this one. Thought of these, which I wasn't sure what they could be. I thought, let's just make the design and then see what happens. And I couldn't figure out anything that goes with this. Youth. So these are sperm. This is something growing. Travel. This is like a road going off. Rainbows. Because when you're in a plane, if you look at a rainbow, you'll see a circle. Like fighter jets, if you're in a fighter jet and you saw a rainbow, you'd see a circle, not a bow shape, I guess, an arch. Beauty, cosmos, medicine, faith. Oh, no, earth. Oops. Ice, knowledge. So knowledge is a book on its side, but I realized this is actually, I think this is the logo for a college called Kwantlen College. So I decided, never mind. And then these arrows are sort of like, when you read, you level up, and this is kind of like leveling up, like a do. Dreams, wind. So yeah, I mean, this was harder than it looked to come up with these crests. I like speed. That's one of my favorite ones. Like, just looks like something going fast. But yeah, so it gave me a lot of things to do. Like, oh, here's war and lightning, so I need to make these goddesses now. So this one's the goddess of lust. So with this, it's kind of representing a penis going into a vagina, I guess, to symbolize things, and tears, and I don't know. And yeah, she's jealous of the goddess of beauty, I figure, because that's just how I think of it. She's kind of airheaded. With the goddess of earth, she's very stable. I would think of her as someone who really has a strong foundation, obviously. So what kind of person would have a strong foundation? Well, someone who is very firm and pragmatic and well-liked, I think. But also someone who's a bit stiff. Maybe they're, they can be a bit serious. And so I figure she has a hearty laugh. Zeronia is just because of Zeronis. I don't know. I'm not happy with the name, nor the outfit, it seems. But she's a goddess of dreams. I figure she doesn't really talk. She's kind of unusual. And these are just faces. I figure the first important thing is to get the face, because if I get the face, I can get the personality. And if I get the personality, then I can build off that. But if I didn't start with the face, it might be a bit tricky to know, what the personality is. And this is Olana, the goddess of food. And I figure she's very cheerful, generous. I think of how people interact with food, and how food is often a thing that's used in social situations to kind of bind people together. So I figured that's kind of her thing. She's very warm, and she wants everyone to get along. And she feeds them as well. And then here I was thinking about where do the goddesses live? So if they live in some kind of heaven-like place, what is that like, and how do people approach? So here was an idea for the throne room of the goddess of death, but I figured maybe the goddesses have similar things. Again, it's just an idea. So I figured like they have this is a top-down view, and they would have like the crest, and all the goddesses float. This is just a trait of all the divine beings, is they all float, because I like floating things, and this lets me do my floating women with weird outfits with markings on their face, and just like it's an excuse to do all the things I want to do anyway, and the story is just built around that. And I figure if I do things I'm interested in or that I like, I'll do a better job. So here's like all the courtiers on the side, and this is just basically ripped off of the Empress of China and other historical things I've seen, shows usually like Mahabharata and stuff. And I remember there's like the throne, and then there's all the courtiers who kind of flank you, and so that's that. Here I tried to do an idea for the realm key, which is like a key that when you put it in any keyhole, like it doesn't matter, it doesn't necessarily fit, it's kind of magical, but whatever door you open, like you put this in the keyhole, turn it, and then you open the door, and wherever the door was supposed to lead, like maybe it's supposed to go from the hallway to the bathroom, well, you're in the hallway, you open the door, instead of going to the bathroom, it then goes to this world. So you walk through, and then you close the door, and then it shuts the door on that world. And then here I was trying to draw the goddess of beauty, and I had done this crest to begin with for the goddess of beauty, which sort of was supposed to resemble a flower, but it didn't feel enough like a flower. It felt kind of like a shuriken or something, like a windmill thing. And so I thought of this one as like, well, that's more like a flower, and it's okay, but it's not great. I tried this one, and it just didn't feel nice. And then I got to this one, and it felt like, oh, that's pretty. I like that one, so I stuck with that one. First I thought of her, and then no, she's not beautiful enough. And then I did her, and I thought this is much better. She looks much more beautiful. I figured that when I think about beauty, though, she's neither old nor young, because I think beauty transcends just youth, and that's why I have a goddess of youth, and I also have a goddess of lust, because it's also not just about sex. It's like, no, things can be beautiful, but not necessarily, they don't necessarily have to be sexual. And so she's like neither old nor young, because wisdom can be beautiful as well. I think of her as proud and classy and elegant, and also that she can be cruel, because I feel like in nature you often see things like a rose that's beautiful, but it has thorns. And so that was kind of the idea behind her, is that yes, she's something that's beautiful, but often things that are beautiful aren't necessarily approachable. And sometimes you'll see people who, they look very beautiful, but they don't necessarily have great personalities. And so I figure she's that way, but she works really hard to appear beautiful and make sure all her movements are graceful and things like that. So this was my first take on her. And I've got a lot of goddesses left to do, a lot of designing to do. So this really solved my problem of, okay, I have this style, now what do I do with it? Well, Wraith. So I hope you stick with me, because I think it's pretty interesting. If you like to see something being built from scratch, you'll get to see the whole process of me developing this story and this character. So yeah, I hope this helped, and thanks for watching.